Ja, variata sa ase tita ha e se ka tina matoy te te la ka se kete soya katanya ma ka iti te ataliata ha a hikete ka a he nyama khatuya ta te atama tai titi ha ai titi ala ke se katapa tai I sa ayana ka ai si iti atarte ete me te esikata. Saya da kete mo atatuti an la makotia. We are here with you on this auspicious occasion of the regrouping of this gathering. We have been with you all along, and especially with our channel, who has experienced many things and taken many steps. We commend her. We commend you all as those who support her energetically, spiritually, and through your love. We tell you, as you well know, many changes are in process on your planet. You may experience your own changes. You may feel that you are just a bit different from where you were a minute ago, or a day ago, or a year ago, or whatever time frame you embrace. Just know that this is all part of it. Many, many changes are happening. Some will be comfortable, some will not. We recommend that you follow the lead of your channel and allow yourself to go deeply within in whatever way you wish, using whatever tools you feel appropriate. Those who are unaware are experiencing changes also, but they remain unaware. They may be confused. They may be in sadness. They may be so confused that they do not wish to continue experiencing that which they are experiencing. Be gentle with them. Encourage them to remain, but if they decide not to remain, that is their choice and their decision made prior to this day. As you know, there cannot be any death. There is only the transition from carrying around your toolkit, that is your physical body, to being free of this toolkit. Of course, the tools are beneficial for you. They help you to experience things that helps your soul to grow and expand. But this is only your schooling, your apprenticeship, if you will, in the ongoing quest to become perfect love with Source. We support you. Ask for our help if you need it in these confusing times. The road is not flat always. Sometimes there are hills and sometimes there are valleys. But just know you are on the correct road. And we commend you, appreciate you, and want to let you know that you are part of the grand plan that leads this entire earthly soul group towards the awakening that will benefit each soul as it moves forward. And it will benefit the entire oneness as all souls continue to be part of that, even in their individual experience. We love you as always. We feel your abilities increasing in your abilities to love, to express your hearts. Now you take out the idea about that idea that I think si katapata idea mahaya like I say siata sikatiti amaya tata ni amakata yala ha tada dame kojo taka ayatiti ni amata ko yata tata yata sa alemako sikatete se emera shakashikatati kate uetata yamata oyetate CET katati ti alamata ti ata sekata patati yamana tetia. We now open our channels for your questions. If you have any questions, we appreciate all your thoughtfulness in your questioning. Does anyone have a question?
I have a question about the Sasquatch. I read something recently where Seth of Jane Roberts in the 70s said that there weren't many of them, maybe 20,000. So the question I have is, has the population grown since then? And the second question I have is Sasquatch helping the humans and the earth through the transition? And if so, how are they doing that?
Many questions. We appreciate that. The population of the Sasquatch varies with the technologies available to the earthly population that is attempting to count, but it also varies with the technology used by the Sasquatch and the ability to interdimensionally travel and to shapeshift and to travel to ships with their ET friends or ET counterparts, or however you wish to think about it. Sasquatch has been here longer than humans have been here. And yet, that time does not exist. So, which came first? Does it matter? No, it does not. The Sasquatch has a purpose and always has had the purpose of being loving beings who are in their natural state, have not forgotten their natural abilities, have developed their abilities, and learned to use their tool, which is their physical body, in the same way that you have a toolkit that is your physical body. Their toolkit has some very technological tools, if you will, that allow them to express their dimensionality. And so giving a number to a beingness that has the ability to shapeshift, to travel among dimensions, and is very good at even physically hiding, has not been possible. At this moment, the Sasquatch are choosing to show themselves more often to more people because they wish to encourage the population of humans on your planet to begin to take care of all beings on your planet, including the tree beings and the stone beings and the water beings and all of the different kinds of beings and all of the different animals and fish and insects that have been put on this planet to enhance its ability to thrive. And humanity has not enhanced that ability to thrive. And it is very, very important that humanity begins to appreciate the interconnectedness of all beings. There's not a single being on your planet that does not have a purpose. There is no one on vacation here. So it is time, past time, to redouble, triple efforts to preserve the health of your planet. Not for the sake of the planet, but for the sake of humanity. You are not killing the planet. It will die its natural death in millions of years. You are harming yourselves. Did that answer the questions that you posed?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for asking the question. It is an important topic. Do we have another question?
Yes, I have a question. When it comes to all of the many different gods and goddesses and other types of beings that different religions worship and believe in, what are these beings something that existed that people tuned into spiritually and discovered, or are they something that people created by believing in them over many years or many thousands of years?
As we have said, you create your reality, your own reality, by your belief systems. So this is another which came first question. The gods and goddesses are part of you because you are part of the one. They arise from the imaginations of the early imaginers, and in that they become true, or they were always true. The imagination was seeded by an experience which was seeded by a desire on the behalf of the imaginer. So, for instance, if there is a god or goddess of harvest, the imaginer first wished that someone would help control the harvest. And therefore they began to create that being that may have been a being that arrived at the time of harvest. It may have been a storm that helped the harvest, but is it a goddess or is it a storm? It depends on what that individual person chooses to believe, and the belief gives credence and life to the god or goddess, if you will, or the storm, or whatever it happens to be. It is all part of a system of creation from imagination and from beliefs. I know that was a roundabout way of answering your question, but religions and worship are created for the convenience and for the help of the individual who first thought them up. And as you have noted, the worship of the gods and goddesses or whatever has given some people permission to not make their own choices, to rely on other beings to give them their marching orders, if you will. So there's all varieties. There is but one entity, which is both a God, an experiencer, a creator, an imaginer, a follower, and a leader. Each individual makes the choice of how they wish to create their experience. I recommend that if you choose to worship a god, you should first look in the mirror and worship your own self-love. That self-love, that worship and appreciation for self will be shared by everyone else. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Do we have another question?
I'm hoping that you can fill us in a little more detail on the the creation of humans in this particular earthen dimension. I know that we're made from parts, and you read many things, but I haven't really studied this. You know, it's part Greys, part Sasquatch, and our DNA was supposedly combined. But if you could just maybe give us a summary of what we're made of, besides imagination.
Well, the imagination starts with the soul, which is part of the one. And you might say that there are many, many imaginers that are all part of the one. So the one has a capacity to have unnumerated number of imaginative creations. So it starts with the soul. And we'll assume that one imaginer thought, I'm going to make a soul. That's not exactly the deepest way, but that will imagine that an imaginer created a soul. And the soul was having fun, thinking and imagining and creating on its own. But a piece of that soul decided, I want to have form. And in that it created all kinds of different things that would be form. So, for instance, it might have created a Sasquatch, and then an ET of some sort, and a string of DNA and all sorts of different pieces. So there is form that is pretty much chemical compounds, if you will, that create a lump of a toy to play with by the imaginer's soul. And then that soul thought, I think I want to jump into this creation and see what this creation is experiencing, knowing full well that creation also had its own consciousness. What we are made of does not really matter, but what I think what you are asking is, what mixture are we? Are we created by a hybrid of something? So you go through many, many, many iterations of creations, of imaginations, and then mixing those together in many other iterations. So if you have an ET that is on a particular planet, that ET began as a drop of source of the love, and through many iterations, I'm not going to call it evolution, but through many iterations, it got mixed together with other imaginers' creations, and it became an ET on a planet 0. Then that planet 0 decided, I'm going to play also, and I'm going to create all of these different iterations of beings, and they, learn the technology to move from one place to another and so forth. We are as humans, and I think you're really asking about humans, we are a mixture of many different creations. We were not first. We are every human may have different mixtures of different varieties. We will share that in her depth, our channel has been given the introduction to a cousin who is a Sasquatch. So you may have all sorts of different mixtures of different pieces of the Duke's mixture that is the universe that started out as one, and we are still one. But that is an oversimplification, and I don't know if it answered your question, but I don't know if your question is answerable from a human perspective. And there will be more information as time goes on through lifetimes. Was that sufficient?
Yes, it was, and I had the vision of building with all kinds of different complex Lego blocks, making all kinds of different things, and I had an unlimited number of blocks, and I could see how many different things I could create. And it was a revealing thing. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Sorry for the interruption.
That is a good way to explain it. Is there another question?
Yes, I have another question. When it comes to those of us who will be joining with the new Earth or moving over, whatever it is, when we end up on the new Earth, will everybody that's there be aware that they're on the new Earth, or will there be some people who were never spiritual but just chose to live a life of love, so they ended up there too?
It's not as simple as jumping from one to the other. It is by degree. Everyone will eventually be part of what you're calling the new Earth. But many will not notice any kind of change because they were already heart-centered, as you mentioned. So those who are aware may even forget, because if the entire population is loving and has attained a particular balance of love, and the whole earth is operating on a heart-centered rather than greed-centered system, Everyone is a light worker, and what is the difference? Really? It's not. The truth of the matter is, some of that's already changed considerably. As we mentioned at the beginning, changes are happening. And it may be as subtle as one day thinking, I'm different than I was. And then someone else might kind of feel like, what the hell is happening? Things are just not the same, and I really want the old stuff. It can be confusing for some and almost not noticeable for others because of where your vibration has centered. Does that make some sense to you?
It does. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I see a beautiful ride where things change quickly and yet gradually. And you may have already noticed how quickly and slowly things are moving. But for you, there's varying degrees of awareness, but you are aware. And you can look at changes and say, that must have been one of those changes that were happening. Maybe that's a step towards the new earth, or maybe that's a step already in the new earth, or whatever. But you see what I'm saying? It's going to be an individual thing for each individual, but it's also collaborative for all individuals. There are so many things that, as a human, you cannot even imagine. You don't even have the capacity to imagine what there is. But it's a fun ride. I thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Is there another question?
I have one. If you could give us some information about the age or maturation of souls. Because I know they start out, inexperienced, and then gradually, as they go through adolescence, and then they mature to adulthood, and then they are mature state later on, and they react differently with the humans because their needs are different. I find that fascinating, and I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit. Thank you.
That is a very human explanation of the evolution of the soul. We prefer to think of it more in terms of remembering. As we have explained previously, at a certain time when you, as a part of the whole, of the one, decided to go out on your own, if you will, and jump out of the comfort zone of the source that is love. And we've described it as kind of like a big bang, where you're plunged out far away, And the further away from Source the soul, the fragment of the soul, reached, the less he remembered. So you described it as like an earthly age progression. And we will describe it as a journey back to the center of love, wherein you remember in steps as you progress back to that love. So does that make sense to you?
I like your explanation a heck of a lot better than I like mine. Thank you so much. I appreciate that too.
Thank you. It's, we might describe those who were the furthest out as those who are using the tools of control and violence and fear and so forth to take their journey, although they have not remembered that those things are counterproductive. So you are closer in, but you're part of Source, and your journey is toward the center of love. And you know, you might think in terms of the new earth being part of that journey into love, because what we expect in the new earth is an increase in love and compassion and all of those yummy things, rather than some of the stuff we are experiencing now. Do we have another question?
I have a question. It's kind of an add-on to what Ray just talked about. If at some point an individual's soul was at Source and had all knowledge, what would compel it or propel it to want to motivate it to go into somewhere where it's forgotten everything and is far away from Source? What would make a soul want to do that?
Well, imagination, creativity, and also the ignorance of what you forget. So when you imagine something, you may not know all the repercussions of going into that imagination. So they did not know that they would have to relearn, basically, or remember everything. They just went on an adventure. And it's a good adventure. In fact, you know, if we all stayed in love, we would have a delicious, delicious existence. But would it be adventurous? I'm just going to leave you with that question. Is there anything else?
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
We missed you. Even though you weren't away.
Thank you. We bid you a pleasant evening and a pleasant week in your time. We do not leave you, but we do not control you either. So just know we are there to support you and love you and help you remember, as we all are remembering. Dai tatagi te varista dai dai te si atata yan la maka kiti te yan matai sa ayatatai sa kait lia katamayate siatama ke ti atamato to diata sine makashi katai tola makai hai si katai titi hama hame atiti.